Welcome back to the second part. It's Jim from the Mavestar Observatory. We're taking a bit of a diversion from the normal topic of what we look at, just because there was an interest from a lot of the viewers with regards to some of the things that I'd found in the Bible, in particular Revelations, and those numbers that all seem to derive back to the number 9 for some reason. If you didn't catch yesterday's video, maybe just a quick look through some of those things that we showed in the video will bring you up to speed on this. But pretty much I said whoever had writ Revelations must have had this pictogram in front of them, or seal, or whatever we could call it. They must have had it in their possession, because whatever is referenced in Revelations can be found in this pattern. For instance, just for argument's sake, it talks of the wall in Revelations being 144 cubits. On the edge of the wall there are 12 gates, and the gates have the names, which are also the names of the 144,000 people, and from the 12 tribes that make it up. So these are the names of the tribes around the outsides. They're also the names of the guardian angels that protect the gates. It states that there are 3 gates in the north, 3 in the east, 3 in the south, and 3 in the west. This can be divided up into 4, and if you do that, you will have 3 gates in each quadrant. As well as a lot of other things we talked about. Just for argument's sake, I wanted to move on with this because I wanted to talk about the universal equation. But 9 is a very special number, and especially when you start breaking it down. If we just look at a 360 degree circle and we divide it by 40 degrees, we get that shape. And obviously 360 divided by 40, we get the number 9. If we try for the number 6, the shape obviously has less petals in and represents more closely like the petals in the flower of life. And in order to get that pattern, you have to separate each petal by 60 degrees, and 360 divided by 60 gives us the number 6. And then we can break it down one more time. Well, you could break it down lots more times. You can keep dividing it, but I think the importance of what I've done here is to bring out the trend of just 3 specific numbers. Nikola Tesla, if you remember, said if you understand the true meaning of 3, 6 and 9, you'll have the keys to the universe in your hands. And obviously if we do separate the petals this time by 120 degrees, we get the number 3. We end up with 3 petals, 6 petals. If we divide it by 60 degrees, we divide it by 40 degrees, we have 9 petals. So just to show you that 360 divided by 120 gives the 3. So there's the 3, 6 numbers and 9. And they're important, and I'm not the only person to discover the importance of these numbers. Mark Rodin, I don't know whether you're aware of him, and his vortex mathematics, he came up with this design. Again, he noticed that the vortex pattern had in the centre of it the 9, and then the 3, and then the 6. But again, 6 and 3 make 9, 5 and 4 make 9, 7 and 2 on its opposites make 9, and 8 and 1 make 9. But 9 in itself is at the centre of the vortex. He's still doing work on this, and he's built obviously, as you know, the toroid coils, and hope to get something out of the technology of that. I'll probably later on in this video I'll show you the core. I might as well do it now. Just bear with me, I'll be 2 seconds. So, as you can see, I've also done some work on the coils, but tried to base it more on the flower of life, wrapping it around a cuboidal pattern. And what we found is when we connected this and put certain frequencies through it, it is on the YouTube channel, you'll see that it pulsates like a heartbeat. at certain times when you're adjusting the the attenuation on the signal generator. This is made up with 9 separate pieces of wire wrapped. So again, I've used the fact that 9 could hold some a secret into the cores. But what I did find is when you brought a magnet in the vicinity of the coil, it rotated very fast in a glass test tube, as well as by altering the frequency, we could get it to bounce and rotate in the glass as well. Maybe at a later date I'll show you that, because I found it quite interesting. You might have noticed this as well, that if you do a bit of origami with the flower of life, you can actually make the pyramid. And on one side of the pyramid you can see we've got the numbers. In the voids of the petal you can see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I don't think that is a coincidence, but you can make a pyramid out of the flower of life if you fold it up. Just on the subject of pyramids, before we do get into the universal equation, and I know a lot of you really are interested in that, I believe because at the end of the day this pattern and the flower of life is in Egypt, and they may well have kept this as a closely guarded secret. And this is how probably it could have ended up in our religious text in Revelations, because this does in fact come from this pattern, but not with the names, and certainly not the marks that I've drawn out on there. But the flower of life, the border pattern is the same, and you can find that in Abydos, Egypt, in the Temple of Osiris. And I mentioned briefly yesterday that they believed it was burned into the rocks. There's some interesting things about Egypt as well. You probably know these already, but the pyramids, 2 of them are in alignment, but the third one is slightly off, and that was because they was actually mimicking what they could see in space, and this was obviously to do with the star constellation Orion. You can see that the 2 that they made the pyramids in perfect alignment, but the third one was slightly off. When looking down on the pyramids, you can see that is exactly the constellation they wanted to bring our attention to. Not only that, that just above that there are 3 major stars. You've got Betelgeuse, Sirius and Procyon, and they formed the Winter Triangle. So they was obviously bringing our attention to the pyramid for some reason. I did at one point do a lot of work on the Great Pyramid, and I noted that the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber were almost like arrows. So I located on a star chart, the exact star constellations, Procyon, where we draw the Winter Triangle. And then if we look at the King and Queen's Chamber, you'll notice that the King's Chamber is just slightly off to the left and above the Queen's Chamber, but they do look like arrows. And as they was probably building the pyramids in the shape of star constellations, and they definitely laid it out on the ground in the pattern, so that we first of all could see where they was pointing us to in the heavens, with the star constellation Orion. That then I thought there must be something more to the King and Queen's Chamber. When I overlaid that on a star constellation, I found that it wasn't by no coincidence. First of all, the Queen's Chamber is central with the pyramid in the star constellation of the Winter Triangle. We got the Procyon, Betelgeuse, and what's the other one? Sirius stars there. But the King and Queen's Chamber, as you can see, the Queen's Chamber is dead slap bang in the centre of Winter Triangle, but the King's is slightly off. But I don't think there's any significant, any coincidence in this, because what the King and Queen's Chambers are actually pointing at is the galactic centre, dead on the line. So it can be no coincidence there. I think there are a few other people that may have discovered this, but just while we was on the topic of that, pyramids and where the actual pattern come from in Abydos, I believe that the Egyptians may have knew some of the keys and secrets of our universe, and they would have kept those obviously in the highest priesthoods and not allowed anyone else to actually get involved or have knowledge of them, because it would have been probably classified as too much for individual human beings to cope with at that point in time, or may even have destroyed the very fabric of their relationship to their religion at the time. Because I think that there's more truth in the universal equation, what I'm about to show you, and all the other things with regards to our origins and our creator. So let's get into it. So the universal equation, I come across this equation one morning. I woke up, and for some reason I knew how to do this equation. I very quickly, before I even got dressed that morning, wrote the equation down, and I wasn't quite sure of how powerful it was at the very first time I discovered it, and used it a few times, and I then began to realise there was more to this than meets the eye. And from that point on, I've put a little bit more to it and realised its significance. So as you can see, if you take any array of numbers, and it doesn't have to be these ones, but you can use as many numbers as you want, what you're going to find by putting them through this equation, which I'm about to show you, is that you will either derive of one of two numbers, a 9 or a 0. And we have something very similar in binary. When we're using binary language, we choose a series of 1s and choose a series of 0s. And in the configurations that we put the 0s and 1s, we can make up anything pretty much. Imagery, sound, so you can have audio, visual, anything you want. As you know, you've got DVDs, and they're printed in binary, or coded in binary, so that when you watch them, you have the film come about, and it's simply by a laser reading the binary code very fast and converting that into data, which the TV will respond in images and video and sound. But let's get on. So we start with any number, we reverse the number. So what we've got here is 7, 8, 5, 4, 6. When we reverse the number, we get 6, 4, 5, 8, 7. Right, we take the larger or the smaller number away from the so what we do is we take 6,000 from the 7,000 up here, which it would be, and then we write the number out as we've got it. So we're left with 13959. We add these numbers up. 1 plus 3 plus 9 plus 5 plus 9 equals 27. You've probably guessed it already. We do it again. 2 plus 7, and we end up with 9. And that's how you get that number. The only other way you get a different configuration is when you get numbers like this, because obviously you can't reverse them because they'll be the same, and when you take the top number away from the bottom number, you end up with 0, and therefore that's the only two possibilities you will get of the outcome of this equation. Now, why is it so important? Why is it the universal equation? Well, I said to you guys the other day, didn't I, that we can today write out an equation for a pyramid shape, a cube shape, a cylinder shape, and we can, in science, we can convert that shape into a number. So we've got a number now that represents the shape, and if we put that number into the universal equation, we will get one of two numbers back, 9 or a 0. So this reduces any number you put into it into a 9 or 0. So why is it important? Well, our universe is using the very same formula in creating things, in its manner of building things. If that's true for what we said about any shapes can be converted into numbers. So planets can be converted into numbers. DNA can be converted into numbers. Stems of plants can be converted into numbers. We find that the Fibonacci numbers turn up in plants a lot. If you look at a pineapple, you end up with a lot of hexagons in there, and they're all connected to each other, and that's a mathematical shape. We can put the mathematical shape into a number. We can then put it into the universal equation, and we'll get one of two numbers back. And it must be a binary language that the universe is operating on. And I say this, first of all, if the universe is using such an equation to create on, then that tells us that it's obviously conscious. It is not just conscious, but it's very intelligent in the way it's doing that. And you know, there isn't, as far as I'm aware, another equation where it doesn't matter what number you put in there, it will always reduce it back down to those two numbers. So why is it a universal equation? Well, it doesn't matter if you're Chinese writing the numbers 1 to 3 in your language, or German or English. You know, me and you are going to instantly recognise them as being different. But when we're actually holding 1, 2 or 3 objects in our hands, the objects are going to be the same in any language. So we can just extend that out into the oceans of our solar system and our galaxy, and beyond our galaxy. That pretty much anywhere there is somebody, they will have a similar, well, they will have the same number system as what we have, and therefore, you know, you've probably heard it said before that the true universal language is in numbers, and you know, it is for that reason that this is the universal equation. And you know, I've showed fractal shapes before using, you know, the Mandelbrot equations. And again, we can put the Mandelbrot equations into the universal equation, and we come back out with the same thing, 9 or 0. There's a lot of other coincidences that everything seems to come back to these numbers, and you can write numbers out in different ways. Let me just see if I've got an example here of putting the numbers out in a different format. So we can write numbers out like this: 2, 3, 4. We know they add up to 9. 5, 6, 7 again add up to 18, but you know, then if we do that little trick at the end, 1 plus 8, we get 9, and we keep writing the numbers out all the way up to 144. You know, we can always do the same thing. Another thing is, what we end up here is with a 9 times table. And what I want to bring your attention to, you might have heard the saying, as above, so below, and this could be relative to this, because, you know, we first of all start off with a 9, then 18, 27, 36, 45, but something different happens here when we get to 45. If you notice, the next number is 54, and it's reversed at 45. And then the next number is 63. Well, if we go back up 3, we get 36 as the answer. So what happens is they start to revert. And finally, you know, there is another way of writing these numbers out so that you bring out the trend of 9, and that is by, you know, doing the numbers, second number below. So you go 1 up, 2 down, 3 up, 4 down, 5 up, 6 down. But the top numbers will always come out at 9, as you can see. And obviously I've played about with this, you know, to find out, you know, how relevant these numbers could be as part of that border pattern that we was looking at. But didn't really come up with anything. Perhaps if I continued going round, we might end up with 144,000, and you know, probably there's something in there, but I didn't get that far with it. But yeah, I just wanted to show you this, guys. I think it's a really interesting equation. I think it's interesting the way it came to me. I think it's very interesting that the Bible seemed to want to draw your attention, if you know what you're looking for in Revelations, to not just this pattern that we're looking at here, but it's what that pattern actually represents. And now number 9 is very important in it. And of course, you know, tracing the roots back of this pattern, we find that it extends back over, you know, 6,000 to 8,000 years. And from the region where most civilizations started from. And you know, again, you can fold the pattern up into a pyramid, and it does come from Abydos in Egypt, after all. So I just thought I'd bring that to you know, your knowledge, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. You know, if you want to have a play about with the equation, then you know, do so. You know, explore it. Because, you know, I've always found it nice to know that, you know, our universe is at, you know, the end of the day creating. I think it's proof that whatever the creator is obviously very wise and smart, and, you know, to know that there is something out there that is working in a particular manner. Just demonstrates that whatever it is, whatever you choose to call it as your God's name, you know, is just proof of its consciousness, and the fact that it's very wise. Let's just say that. So I'm going to leave it here, guys. You know, if you got something out of the video, you want to help support us at the observatory. You know, we don't do many excursions like this and detours off into other subjects, but you know, I just thought it'd be nice to you know, show a few of our new subscribers something else other than what we usually do. So the links are down there if you want to support us, and I'll say what I usually do. Have a great day, and as always, bye for now.